In 51 BC, almost immediately after the last pockets of Gallic resistance were pacified and stability was restored to the northern provinces, relations between Julius Caesar and the corrupt Senate of Rome rapidly deteriorated. Caesar, who had recently secured the right to stand for election in absentia, was betrayed by the very men who had granted him this power. Armies were being raised in both Spain and Italy, and it soon became clear that the Senate would cast off all pretense, throwing away the very laws they themselves created in order to force Caesar into an impossible position. For more than a year, negotiations were attempted, settlements were drawn up, but every time the two sides came close to an agreement, the Senate would balk and pull away. There is an idea that exists about Julius Caesar and who he was. An archetype of a tyrant, whose genius was such that everything that happened from 51 BC onward was by his design, and that warring with Pompey was always his ultimate desire. This idea is not a new one, but how much credence can we give to this line of thinking? Did Julius Caesar plan for, or even want, a civil war? Or did he do almost everything in his power to avoid it, even after the war had started? Today, we're going to look at the last two messages Caesar sent to Pompey, which are recorded in De Bello Civili, and uncover the truth of Julius Caesar and his constant efforts at diplomacy, which were ultimately shunned by corrupt warhawks and a decrepit oligarchy. In January of 49 BC, Caesar crossed the Rubicon and met with those tribunes who had been forced to flee Rome in fear for their lives, having been robbed of their ability to object to the Senate's machinations. Among these, two men, Lucius Caesar and a praetor named Roscius, delivered a message directly to Caesar from Pompey, and after this, Caesar entrusted both of them with delivering this message back to their commissioner. Only consider that by a small expenditure of effort, you can put an end to grave dissensions and release all Italy from fear. Prestige has always been of prime importance to me, even outweighing life itself. It pained me to see the privilege conferred on me by the Roman people being insultingly wrested from me by my enemies, and to find out that I was being robbed of 6 months of my command and dragged back to Rome, although the will of the people had been that I should be admitted as a candidate in absentia at the next elections. However, for the sake of Rome, I bore this loss of privilege with good grace. When I wrote to the Senate suggesting a general demobilization, I was not allowed even that. Troops are being raised all over Italy. My 2 legions, which were taken from me on the pretext of a Parthian campaign, are being retained, and the whole state is in arms. What is the aim of all these preparations but my destruction? However, I am ready to submit to anything and put up with anything for the sake of Rome. My terms are these. Pompey shall go to his provinces. We shall both disband our armies. There shall be complete demobilization in Italy. The regime of terror shall cease. There shall be free elections, and the Senate and the Roman people shall be in full control of the government. To facilitate this and fix the terms and ratify them with an oath, I suggest that Pompey either comes to meet me or allows me to meet him. By submitting our differences to mutual discussion, we shall settle them all. This message was delivered to Pompey, but the Senate would not budge, demanding that Caesar return to Gaul and completely disband his legions. Only upon fulfilling this would Pompey leave for Spain, and the order to disband the Italian legions would be given. It was only at this point, when Caesar realized that not even an opportunity for a conference would be allowed, that he fully embraced the reality that, at least for the moment, attempts at peace must be abandoned. The first year of the war saw significant losses for both sides. In Spain, the Pompeians were forced to capitulate after being outmaneuvered by Caesar, and in Africa, Gaius Curio and the Caesarian legions were completely annihilated by the Numidian king, Juba, an event we covered in depth in a previous video. The following year, with losses mounting on both sides, Caesar once again tried to end the war through diplomatic means. In Greece, not long after arriving with half of his army, Caesar sent another plea to Pompey, this time via a loyal Pompeian officer, Lucius Vibullius Rufus, who had come into Caesar's power for the second time, and was to be pardoned and released once more. The message Caesar sent was as follows: "Both of us ought to stop being obstinate, disarm, and not tempt fortune further. We have both suffered enough damage to serve as a lesson and a warning, and make us fear the ills that still remain. You have been driven from Italy. You have lost Sicily, Sardinia, and both the Spanish provinces, and 130 cohorts of Roman citizens in Italy and Spain. I have suffered the death of Curio, the loss of the African army, and the surrender of Antonius and his men at Corcyra Nigra. Let us therefore spare both ourselves and Rome. Our own losses have given us enough proof of the power of fortune in war. This is the best time of all to discuss peace, while we are both confident and appear equally matched. But if fortune should favor one, only a little, the one who seems better off will have nothing to do with terms of peace, nor will he be satisfied with an equal share, when he believes he can have everything. As for the conditions of peace, since we ourselves have been unable to reach a settlement up till now, we should ask the Senate and people of Rome to frame terms. Meanwhile, it should content the state and ourselves if we at once swear publicly to dismiss our armies within 3 days. When we have laid down our arms and the support on which we now rely, then we shall perforce be content with the decision of the Senate and people. So that you can agree to this the more readily, I undertake to dismiss all my forces on land and in the various cities." Rufus took this message to Pompey all the more hastily because he needed to inform Pompey of Caesar's landing and the threat he posed to the Greek coast. But sadly, and for the final time, any chance at peace was snubbed, and Pompey set course for his ultimate destruction. Suspicion of Caesar's motives in the war have been debated by historians since the 1st century. Suetonius even mentions the propaganda that Pompey spread, that Caesar's pretext for crossing the Rubicon and marching on Rome was that Caesar had insufficient capital to carry out his grandiose schemes, and so sought to throw everything into confusion. Cicero thought that Caesar's constant exercise of power gave him a love of it, and after weighing his strength against his enemies, he made his bid for absolute power. There will always be a question of ulterior motive, especially when the victor achieved so much. But I believe that, just by looking at his actions, we cannot fault Caesar for any of his choices before or during the Civil War. And without his bold stand, the corrupt and degenerate Republic would never have given way to the age of Augustus and the 200 years of peace that followed. Thank you for watching this video. You can support this channel by leaving a like and subscribing. If you are a Republic apologist and think Caesar was a tyrant, you can help this channel even more by picking up a book and learning to read. Until next time.